Hi everyone, my name is Louisa and I welcome you to this video lesson on academic vocabulary. And today we're talking about art. It's everywhere around us in the form of music, paintings, sculptures, and so on and on. And to learn some art vocab, we're going to use a passage from Cambridge IELTS 13 called Artificial Artists. If you're ready, let's get started.
The first word today is score, which has two meanings. Score is a printed piece of music, like the one you can see in this picture. So it's a piece of paper on which you can see a printed piece of music. You can actually read the notes here. And the second meaning is the music composed for a film or play. Let's look at some examples. We need 10 copies of the score for all musicians. Obviously here, a copy means a printed piece of music. So we need 10 copies like these in this picture. The second example, the score is quite scary in some parts of the film. Here, the score means the music in the film is quite scary. The score for the film was composed by an unknown composer, so we don't know who composed the music for this film. Now you can ask about the difference between a score and a soundtrack, because when we talk about music for a film or movie, we often use the word soundtrack. So let's see what the difference is. A film score is original, usually instrumental music, composed and recorded especially for a film. So it's not a song that has existed before the movie. Let's watch an example of a film score. Now, what you just heard was a score for music. So the music was instrumental. Nobody sang anything in there. There were no words. And that music was written especially for this film, for this show. And a film soundtrack is more a selection of songs chosen to be featured in a film. So there are a list of songs. Maybe there's just one song. Maybe there are a few songs. And they are chosen to be used in a film or a movie. For instance, Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go, an artificial composer, has had audiences enraptured and even tricked them into believing a human was behind the score. Now let's divide this sentence into two parts and look at each separately. So, classical music by an artificial composer has had audiences enraptured. This means that a group of people listened to some classical music and they were impressed by it. And that music, however, was written by an artificial composer, which means it wasn't human who wrote that music. So it was a computer program. And these people, they started to believe that that music was actually written by a human. That's what they believed in. And we can see that the word the score is used here, and by the score we mean music that was written for a play or a movie. Let's move on. The next word is subtle. Subtle. Subtle is American pronunciation, and in British English you can hear subtle, subtle. You will hear the t sound very clearly, subtle. And it means not very obvious or easy to notice. So it's something that is not easy to see. For instance, there are subtle differences between the two versions. In this picture here, you can see two icons for Google Chrome, one from 2014 and the other one from 2022. They are very similar to each other, but there are still subtle differences, which means it's very hard to understand the difference between them, but the differences are there. Another example, a subtle change could be felt in the room. So it means that there was a very small change and maybe not many people could feel it, but there was something different in it. Subtlety is the noun form. And because subtle means something not very obvious or not easy to notice, subtlety in American English or subtlety in British English means the small but important details of something. So those details are small, but they're important. For example, it is hard for beginner students to understand the subtleties of a new language. So when you're learning a new language, there are a lot of small details. They're not easy to see, not easy to notice, but they're really important. And for a beginner student, it's hard to understand them. The second meaning of the word subtle is delicate and not strong or bright. And this meaning is used particularly when we talk about colors or flavors. Flavors means tastes. So in this picture, for example, you can see that all the colors are subtle colors. They're not very strong, not very bright. They're very gentle and delicate. For instance, the dish was subtle in flavor. It didn't have a very strong taste. Or there are many hair color options available from subtle to extreme. So there are different colors and they can be not very strong and they can be very bright. Subtlety is the noun form. For example, his understanding of light brings great subtlety to his painting. So because he understands light very well, in his painting, you will see that the light is not very strong, it is not very bright, it's very nice to look at. Another example, boxed wines lack the finesse and subtlety of a well-aged wine. So we've got two kinds of wine. We've got boxed wine and well-aged wine. All right, so boxed wines are not considered to be a very high quality, and they don't have that nice and subtle flavor of a well-aged wine. So well-aged wine is preferred. And the third meaning of the word subtle is behaving or organized in a clever way and using indirect methods in order to achieve something. So if you look at this picture, you can see that this woman here is kind of thinking of something, and she has maybe come up with a subtle plan to do something. She might have a goal, and she's going to use some indirect methods to achieve it. Let's look at some examples. The politician used a subtle plan to win the election. So this subtle plan was clever. It was cleverly organized. It didn't have a direct method, so it didn't probably tell people directly what he wanted from them, but at the same time, he managed to achieve his goal. Another example, we have to find a subtle way to solve the problem. A subtle way means it must be a clever way, but at the same time not very direct, but this way must help us solve the problem. Subtlety, again, is a noun form, and just like this adjective, it has the same meaning as a noun. For instance, listening to the interview, I was impressed by the subtlety of the questions, which means I was impressed by how the questions were organized, how clever they were, and how, despite the fact that they were indirect, how they achieved their purpose. When it comes to social skill, subtlety is the key. So when you are communicating with people, sometimes you have to be clever. You sometimes can't say things directly. So you have to kind of find your way around the conversation. You have to be careful in order to achieve your goal. Let's now move on to the next word, and it is sophisticated. Sophisticated is American pronunciation, and in British English you will hear the T sound more clearly. So it will sound like sophisticated, sophisticated. Sophisticated is an adjective, and if we talk about a machine or system, it means it is very advanced and works in a clever way. So that's the first meaning of the word sophisticated. For example, some sophisticated programs even require that passwords contain letters and numbers. So if a program is sophisticated, it means it is advanced, it's a very clever program, and it wants the passwords that people use to have letters and numbers in them. Another example, these days children quickly learn to use sophisticated electronic devices. So children are so smart that they can learn how to use these clever systems, these clever electronic devices. Sophistication is the noun form. Sophistication. Example, the sophistication of computers is increasing. That means computers are becoming more advanced. They're becoming smarter than before. And the second meaning of the word sophisticated is having a lot of experience of the world and knowing about fashion, culture, and other things that people think are socially important. So if you meet a sophisticated person, for example, that means this person has a lot of experience of the world. He's probably met a lot of people in life. He's probably been to a lot of places and knows a lot about fashion, culture, and other things. So this person will probably be educated and smart and interesting to talk to. Example, Mark is a smart and sophisticated young man. Layered hairstyles are versatile, trendy, and sophisticated. So in this meaning, in this sentence, if we talk about hairstyles and we call them sophisticated, it means these hairstyles are quite fashionable. You know, like a lot of people would want to have them because it looks nice. It shows that you've got good taste. And another example, the dress gave her an elegant, sophisticated look. So this woman who was wearing that dress looked sophisticated. She looked like she had a good taste and she knew a lot about fashion. The noun form is once again sophistication, and it will keep the same meaning, the meaning of the adjective. Whether you like painting or sculpture, artwork brings sophistication into the home. That means if your home has some paintings or sculptures in it, your home becomes more sophisticated, and people who come to your home, they will think highly of you because they will see that you know things about art and culture. So it brings that element of sophistication into your home. And the second example, despite her scruffy clothes, there was an air of sophistication about her. This means that this woman was wearing not very tidy clothes. She didn't look very good, but there was still something sophisticated about her. So, like from looking at her, you could see that she has had some experience of the world, and she was maybe a gentle woman. She knew some things about fashion or culture. And when we say that there was an air of sophistication about her, that means it's something positive, despite the scruffy, untidy clothes. And an example from the passage. Human beings are the only species to perform sophisticated, creative acts regularly. This means human beings are the only animals on earth that can create something artful, something tasteful. And we do that regularly. The next word is canvas. Canvas is a strong, heavy, rough material used for making tents, sails, etc., and by artists for painting on. So in this first picture, you can see that this kind of cloth can be used, this kind of material can be used for making tents or some other things. You know, it's a very rough material. When you touch it, it doesn't feel very smooth or nice. It's quite rough. And it can also mean, the canvas, can also mean something that artists paint on. You can see that in the second picture. So it's quite often white or beige in color. So it's got this color of milk, but in most cases, of course, they are very light. Let's look at an example. Smith painted an oil painting on the canvas. So Smith must be an artist, or he just wanted to paint something, and he painted it on the canvas. The students liked to paint on canvas, so they used this thing in the wooden frame here to paint. The canvas is stretched over a wooden frame. So the canvas, that is that material, is stretched over a wooden frame. And the passage example, Aaron, a robot, can pick up a paintbrush and paint on canvas on its own. This means that there's this robot called Aaron, that's his name, and he can just pick up a paintbrush and start painting on canvas by himself or itself, because it's a robot. So this robot can use canvas to paint on, just like artists. The next word is concept. The first meaning of concept is an idea or a principle that is connected with something abstract. And something abstract, it means something that we cannot touch, we cannot look at. It's not an object. We can only think of abstract things. For instance, beauty is an abstract idea. Love is an abstract thing. It's not something we can touch or see or give to each other. Example, basic concepts or fundamental concepts or key concepts. It means the basic ideas about something abstract. Another example, on the business course, students learn about abstract concepts such as leadership and teamwork. So there's this business course, and students who are taking that course, they can learn basic ideas about leadership and teamwork. And leadership and teamwork, they are abstract ideas. They are not real things, real objects. And that is why we say we learn abstract ideas. And the second meaning of the word concept is an idea for something new. For example, we're working on a design concept for a new school. So we need a design idea for a new school. Conceptual is the adjective form, and it means related to or based on idea, because concept is an idea, and if something is conceptual, it means it's based on ideas. For instance, the plans have both conceptual and practical difficulties. So there will be some problems both in the way the plan is thought, how it's considered, how it's built, and how it's going to be realized, how it's going to be put in practice. Conceptually is the adverb. Example, our method is conceptually simple and produces useful and easily readable maps. Our method is conceptually simple means there is a very simple idea behind our method. So our method is based on a very simple idea. It's simple to understand. And since we're talking about art, let's have a look at the definition of conceptual art. Conceptual art is art in which the idea, which the work of art represents, is considered to be the most important thing about it. So the idea behind the work of art is the most important thing. It's not important how it's performed. It's not important, the technique of the performance is not as important as the idea behind it. So I'd like you to have a look at this picture here. And this picture is called 1 and 3 Chairs. This is a work of art created in 1965 by Joseph Kosos. And here you can see that in the middle, you can see a real chair. On the left, you can see a picture of the same chair. And on the right, there is an enlarged definition of the word chair taken from the dictionary. So basically this is an example of conceptual art, which is trying to represent the idea of a chair, and chair can be presented in different forms. But in each form, whether it's in the form of a picture of a real object or a dictionary definition, it is still a chair, and that's what it represents. And an example from the passage. The painting fool, a computer program, only needs a minimal direction and can come up with its own concepts by going online for material. This means that this computer program, which is called the painting fool, needs very little direction. That is, it doesn't need to be controlled. It can work on its own, but it needs like really very little direction. And it can find its own ideas by going online. So concepts here is used to say new ideas. Next up is the word palette. And palette, as you can see in this picture, is a thin board with a hole in it for the thumb to go through, used by an artist for mixing colors on when painting. So an artist can take this palette and put his or her thumb through this hole right here and can start mixing his or her paints on this palette, on this board. Let's look at an example. The artist showed his students how to prepare a palette. The word palette has several meanings, and the second being the range of colors that a painter, photographer, filmmaker, etc. usually uses. So for example, in this picture you can see a range of colors, and they might be typical of a particular painter or photographer or filmmaker. So these professionals can prefer some colors or ranges of colors. And the third meaning is the range of colors used in the decoration of a house, etc. So it's the range of colors used in the design, basically. So you can see that in both the third and the second meanings, palette means a range of colors, whether used by professionals or in interior design. Let's look at an example. The range of the artist's palette widened to include cobalt blue, ultramarine, chrome yellow, and viridian green. I know these sound a little strange. I mean, all these colors, because they have like these special shades of colors, but they're used in order to describe the artist's palette. So this artist preferred these colors. This was his range of colors that he used in his works. So that's why we talk about the artist's palette. And another example, she chose a muted palette, potty green in the living room, a rich brown in the bedroom. So you can see that here the colors are used to talk about the decoration of a house. And another one, I love this quilt. The color palette is soft and soothing. So the range of colors of this quilt is soft and soothing. And finally, the last meaning of the word palette. It's a flat case containing makeup, such as eyeshadow or highlighter of different colors. So you can see that there's this person in the picture working with the palette of eyeshadows, most probably. So there are different colors in this case, in this palette. Let's look at some examples. This palette contains 5 of our best-selling eye colors. And one more, I couldn't help buying those glamorous makeup palettes that I saw on sale. And we're moving on to the word replica. Replica is a noun and it means a very good or exact copy of something. As you can see in this picture, this is a replica of a dinosaur. So because we all know that dinosaurs do not exist anymore, this is just a replica of a dinosaur. Let's look at some examples. Amy was a younger replica of her mother. In other words, she was a copy of her mother. She was very similar to her. And another one, we thought the chair was an antique worth a lot of money, but it turned out to be a valueless replica. So it was just a copy. It wasn't worth anything. To replicate is the verb form, and it means to copy something exactly. For instance, students in the art class were asked to replicate Van Gogh's Starry Night and make an exact copy of the piece. In other words, students were given Van Gogh's Starry Night painting and they were asked to make an exact copy of it. So they were asked to replicate it. Replication is the noun form and it means the act of copying something exactly. But that's only one meaning. Another meaning of this noun form is the copy that is made. And in this meaning, replication and replica are the same things. So for example, why would I pay a huge price for a replication of a designer handbag? In other words, you could say, why would I pay a huge price for a replica of a designer handbag? That is just a copy of a designer handbag. It's not a real handbag. And the passage example. Douglas Hofstadter of Indiana University said EMI created replicas which still rely completely on the original artist's creative impulses. So he said that this computer program created copies which relied on original artists' works. The next word is revered. Revered is an adjective. If someone is revered, it means he or she is held in deep respect and devotion. So, in other words, if someone is revered, other people respect this person very deeply. Example, he was a revered scientist. Revere is the verb form, which means to admire and respect somebody or something very much. For instance, he is now revered as a national hero. This is the passive voice structure, and we say he is now revered. It means other people revere him as a national hero. Another example, the Chinese revered corn as a gift from heaven. So they appreciated corn, they respected corn as a gift. Reverence is the noun form of the word revered. Reverence is a feeling of admiring and respecting somebody or something very much. For example, the painting inspires deep reverence for nature. So when you look at that painting, the one that is the sentence is about, it invokes the feelings of admiration and respect for nature. Another example, children are taught to show reverence toward their elders. So it is taught to children that they should respect their elders. So to show reverence towards someone means to show respect to someone. He is still held in great reverence throughout the country. He is still held in great reverence means he is still admired, he is still respected greatly. She spoke of them with profound reverence. So she spoke of them with a lot of respect. So she had a lot of respect for them. And it's time for passage example. Composer David Cope invented a program called Experiments in Musical Intelligence, or EMI. Not only did EMI create compositions in Cope's style, but also that of the most revered classical composers, including Bach, Chopin, and Mozart. So let's break this down. Let's break this paragraph down into two parts. So according to the first sentence, this composer named David Cope, he created a program, EMI, or Experiments in Musical Intelligence. And this program managed to create compositions in this composer's style. But not only in his style, this program could also copy the style of the most revered composers, and in other words, the most respected composers such as Bach, Chopin, and Mozart. Now let's move on to the word genuine. Genuine is an adjective which means real or exactly what it appears to be. So for instance, in this picture you can see belt made of genuine leather. So genuine leather means real leather. For example, is the painting a genuine Picasso? That is that a real Picasso's work? Another example, the document is not considered genuine. So it's not a real document. It might be just it's just a fake document. The second meaning of the word genuine is if people or emotions are genuine, they are honest and sincere. So if people show genuine emotions, it means that they are truly feeling them and they're not lying about their emotions. For instance, she always showed genuine concern for others. It means she was always worried about other people, and those were her sincere feelings. Genuinely is the adverb form, and it replicates the meaning of the adjective. So it means truly and in a way that is exactly what it appears to be and is not artificial. That's the first meaning. Just because genuine has two meanings, the adverb also has two meanings. The second one being in a sincere and honest way that can be trusted. And let's have a look at two examples. The first, the election result was genuinely democratic. It means it looked democratic and it was democratic. She was genuinely sorry. Here the word genuinely is used in the second meaning, and it means she was really sorry. She was honestly sorry. Genuineness is the noun form. Genuineness. There is no reason to doubt the genuineness of these documents. It means these documents seem fine, they seem real, and there is no reason to doubt the genuineness of them. The second example, even through the TV screen, people could feel her genuineness, how true she was. It means her true feelings showed through the TV screen. And passage example, audiences were moved to tears, and EMI, that is Experiments in Musical Intelligence program, even fooled classical music experts into thinking they were hearing genuine Bach. According to this paragraph, this sentence, audiences, that is people who listened to music created by this program, they were moved to tears. They were so impressed, they started crying. And they believed that they were hearing genuine Bach. They believed that they were listening to music created by Bach himself. And the last word for today is impulse. Impulse to do something. An impulse to do something is a sudden, strong wish or need to do something without stopping to think about the results. So when you suddenly get a strong wish to do something and you don't even think about what's going to happen as a result of your action, that's when you get an impulse. Let's look at an example. He had a sudden impulse to stand up and sing. That means he wanted to stand up and sing. He didn't want to think why he wanted that. He just wanted to get up and do it. The door was open, and on an impulse, she went inside. So this woman, from the sentence, she saw an open door and she had a desire, she had a strong wish to enter the room. So she went inside. She did it on an impulse. So when we do something without thinking, we do it on an impulse. Or you can say on impulse. You can talk about an impulse buy, an impulse purchase, which means when you buy something without thinking, that the item that you bought or the thing you bought or the action of buying that is called an impulse buy or an impulse purchase. For instance, the dress I bought yesterday was an impulse buy. So I didn't think very clearly before buying it. I didn't think that I didn't need it. I didn't think about how much money I would spend on it. So it was an impulse buy. And that dress would be an impulse item. Supermarkets sell candy as impulse items at the checkout counter. Impulsive is the adjective form. And when we use the word impulsive to talk about people and their behavior, it means acting suddenly without thinking carefully about what might happen because of what you're doing. For example, he told me not to be impulsive, but to think it over. It means he told me not to act impulsively, not to act without thinking. So he told me to calm down and think about the decision that I'm going to make. You can talk about an impulsive man. An impulsive man is someone who does something, who does things without thinking about the results of his action. It is normally a bad thing to be an impulsive man because you can make mistakes if you don't think about the consequences of your actions. If a decision is impulsive, it means it wasn't well thought. So you made a decision, it probably had bad consequences, so it was an impulsive decision. You regret that decision. And the final passage example. Douglas Hofstadter of Indiana University said EMI created replicas which still rely completely on the original artist's creative impulses. We've actually talked about this sentence before, and we said that this man said that this computer program created copies. And these copies of music, they still based largely on the original artist's creative impulses. So when we talk about artists' creative impulses, we mean that artists get a strong wish, a sudden strong wish to create something, to create music in this case, right? And this computer program just replicated those creative impulses.
I hope this was useful. To increase the usefulness of this video, pronounce the words out loud and make your own examples. I wish you good luck with your practice. Bye!